Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. I wanted to make a quick video on um, on the Flashpro calibrations and just share with you guys why I decided to go with the AFD intake compared to any other intake that's out in the market that requires additional tuning for it to run properly, or why I chose this over my engine colder intake that I once had. Usually the engine's my first choice when it comes to intakes on my cars, but taking a look at the different calibrations and doing comparisons and stuff, I decided to just keep the short ram intake for now. And of course, this isn't going to be the same thing for everybody, but this is taking a look at these calibrations, these stock calibrations on the Flash Pro is it should give you a great idea of what how your car is going to perform. But of course, everyone's goals are different. Everyone's idea is going to be different. There really is nothing that's better than anything else because everyone's needs are just different when it comes to their car and modifying their car. So let's just dive right into it. Right now, we do have the stock tune calibration here. I am picking up this information directly from Hondata's website under the Flashpro calibrations. So feel free to do the comparison. I did try out the stock tune calibration here for a little bit when I first picked up the Flashpro, and I did notice, of course, the drivability difference here in the mid-range and daily driving. As far as horsepower, there isn't that much of a gain, of course, because Honda did tune this car pretty good from the factory. But of course, anything below 6,000 RPM was basically for fuel economy, and Honda was able to extract a little bit more out of it. So right now, let's do comparison between the engine cold air intake. As you can see, of course, the engine cold air intake base map. Come on, there we go. The base map is a pretty good map. As you can see, you get a huge gain in torque here between 45 and 5,500 RPM, and as well as horsepower, 45 to 5,500 RPM. Nice gain. But I mean, it depends on how you're driving the car. Right now, if you're doing daily driving, you're going to either be shifting between 3 and 4,000. If you're shifting at 5,000, 6,000 every day, like on a daily, your daily commute to work or whatever, you're shifting really high. But it does have a nice little gain here. As you can see, the gain on top end, when you're pushing it hard after 6,000, there's a noticeable gain there. Up here, there's a little bit of a gain, but it just seems very flat and it's consistent, but it's a little bit flat there. So let's take a look at the comparison between the engine cold air intake calibration versus the K&N, which is the same thing as the AF Dynamics intake as far as design. And let's take a look at that. See the difference? Did you guys see the difference right away? So right now, between 45 and 5,500 RPM, you do get an increase in torque, but not as much as the engine. Of course, let's go back to the engine. Right there, see the huge difference? All right, and let's take a look at the torque. I'm sorry, the horsepower. Horsepower, it's a little bit of a gain there. As you can see, engine, K&N. But of course, with my goals, really not worried too much about the mid-range because that's gonna make up with the header, which we'll get to next. But my thing is everything that happens after 6,000 RPM. The torque curve here, you get a nice little gap there, and then it kind of starts to narrow down right here once you hit around 8,000 RPM. And as far as the horsepower, it's got a kind of a little bit of a narrow band there, and it kind of peaks out here at about 8,000 RPM also. Now let's compare that to let's compare that to the engine. Let's get a little bit closer here on the torque. See the torque there? I'm sorry, yeah, see the torque curve there after 6,000, and then the K&N, oops, and the K&N. See how it opens up a little bit? Right around 7,000. See that curve just kind of opens up a little bit more. Yep, on the torque. That's the big difference right there. And in the horsepower, let's look at the horsepower here. Just so you guys can see engine cold air intake. Look at everything after 6,000 RPM all the way to 8,000. See the difference? A little bit of a difference. See at 8,000 RPM, it kind of opens up a little bit. So with the engine, according to Hondata and their intake calibration, you get better lower and mid-range on the engine cold air versus the K&N. K&N, you get a little bit better gains and top end after 6,000. So let's kind of take a step back and go into stock tuned with the race header. With this one here, it's a very popular setup where people do maybe K&N filter panel or open up their resonator, or they do an HPS hose with K&N filter. Of course, it's a great setup, but that resonator box is very, very restrictive. Coming from the K&N short ram to stock tuned in a header, big difference there. Big difference all around. K&N, stock and header, big difference. Now let's move forward. I just want to show you that one just because I still have my K&N drop-in and the HPS hose. I still have it, but the short ram's good. All right, so let's go to race header and engine cold air intake. There we go. Boom. Let's take a look at the torque curve a little bit. Engine and header. Of course, they did it with a DC header, but this kind of gives you an idea. Using any larger headers, of course, it's going to give you a rough idea on how your car should perform. Of course, I'm going from, compared to this, I'm going to be going to my NVIDIA header. So with the NVIDIA header, you can expect more gains. That one and the skunk too, but all right, let's get to it. All right, so look at that huge gains right after 4,000 to 6,000. Let's just focus in that area right there. So it starts to open up after 4,000, and then at 5 to 6,000, you get this huge gain here, which is really, really nice. And then after 6,000, it kind of just starts to go a little bit flat, and it kind of narrows down here after 7,000, 7,500 RPM to 8,000 RPM. Let's take a look at the horsepower. It starts to open up at 4,500, right, all the way to 6,000, and then you got this kind of like a very narrow spot right there, right after 6,000, and then 6,000 to 8. Kind of narrows down a little bit too. I'm not sure why that restriction is happening there and there, but I'm kind of starting to wonder if that's because it has to do with the length of the tube, the intake tube. But let's take a look here. So this is the engine and header calibration. Let's take a look at the K&N and header calibration. All right, you see the difference there? K&N, SRI, and header, engine, K&N, and header. See the difference? All right, let's take a look. Between 4,000 and 6,000, engine is awesome, right? Pretty good with the K&N, except it doesn't open up until not as much after 4,000, but from 5 to 6 is really good. But let's take a look at what happens at 6,000 RPM. See that? On the engine side, torque just kind of, after 6,000, it just kind of falls straight down. And with the K&N or short ram, opens up. It stays open. Look what happens at 8,000 RPM. 8,000 RPM, look at that. Look at that torque. And it even tells you here on the gains, 23%, 22.9% versus 26% maximum gain. So let's go back to the horsepower here. Between 45 and 6,000 RPM on the horsepower and the engine. And let's switch over to the short ram. Not that much of a difference between 5 and 6,000, but look what happens at 6,000. See that narrow cut, a narrow band there? Boom, opens up. After 6,000, 6 to 8,000, look how much that opens up. See that? Look at that, 6 to 8,000. Boom, look at that. Now look at the whole power curve, right? There's gains in the mid-range towards the upper, but short ram, once you hit the mid-range, it just opens up all the way to the top. So that's the comparison. The next thing I'm going to do is my NVIDIA header, and I'm looking to, of course, upload my calibration, that calibration to be exact, and let's see how it performs. But there you have it. This is why I'm doing the short ram intake and header for now, is because the difference according to these calibrations. Now, I'm not saying that my car is, I'm not bashing the engine cooler intake at all, 100%. I love engine products. They are my first choice. And K&N is usually my second choice in terms of brands. But right now, just to keep a standard, simple setup, I think a lot of this has to do with the distance the air has to travel on the tubing, but who knows? This is what Honda was able to get, and I'm looking forward to experience that based on their results. And if you guys, some of you that don't know what intake I'm using the AF Dynamics intake. That's just got the exact same thing as the K&N. It's pretty good intake. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, take a look at my unboxing on that intake. Very, very cool. But that's where I'm looking to be. Stay tuned. My next video should be my NVIDIA header install. Should be fun. I'm doing it this week, last week of April, this week 24th. So stay tuned. Should be fun. Be making some videos right after that. But there you have it. Why I chose short ram intake versus K&N. So we'll see what happens. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Later.